Hi guys, I hope you're all well. So today you're just going to do some of the math strategies of solving for x. So we are just going to we're going to talk about simultaneous equation. So simultaneous equations. So what is a simultaneous equation, or rather how do you go about to solve a question using a simultaneous equation method? So basically, if you are asked any question for solve for x, if you are asked any question for solve for x, questions like fx minus 2 is equals to 3, how do you go about solving this question? Because of, firstly, you can see that this is a linear equation. It's a linear equation, so you can just solve it directly. You can just take 2 to the other side, it becomes 3 plus 2, and then this side will be only left with 4x, and then from here you divide by 4 both sides, divide by 4, divide by 4 this side, and then you get that your x is equals to 5 over 4. So that's how you go about solving a question once it is linear, once it is more or less straightforward. Why? Because of here there is only one unknown. There's only one unknown. Therefore, it is more easy for you to solve it this method because of there is only one unknown. But for simultaneous equations, these are equations that are applied, or rather it's a method that is applied whenever you have two or more of your unknowns. For example, if this question was 4x minus 2y is equals to 3. So since in this case you have what? You have two unknowns. Therefore, since you have two unknowns simultaneous, that's where simultaneous equations come into place. So you apply simultaneous equations. So you apply simultaneous equations whenever you have two or more unknowns. Whenever you have two or more unknowns, that's when you apply simultaneous equations. And because of there are two or more unknowns, that simply means there will also be two or more of your equations. So because of there are two or more unknowns, therefore you can apply simultaneous. So here are some of the tips on applying simultaneous equations, or rather here are some of the methods that are always used whenever you apply simultaneous equations. Because simply simultaneous equations, it consists of what? Of two or more equations. It consists of two or more equations. But for grade 10, 11 and 12, in most cases, you only apply it when they give you two of your equations. They give you two equations. So since you have two equations, the first method that you do whenever you approach equations that is related to simultaneous equation, the first thing that you do is you name your equations. The first thing that you do is you name your equations. So how do you name your equations? You name your equations. So for example, if you are given an equation of y is equals to 3x plus 4, remember that it's a simultaneous equation, so therefore there are two equations. So the first equation is y is equals to 3x plus 4, and then your other equation, let's say you are given an equation of y is equals to x to the power of 3 minus 4. So if you are given these two equations and then you are asked to find the x and y, the first thing that you do is you name your equations. Naming the equation, that simply means the first equation you can denote it to be equation 1. That's how you name it. And then the second one, you can also denote it to be equation 2. That's how, then therefore you have named your equation. So you name your equation. The first one, you can say your equation is equation 1, and you also need to name the second one to say it is equation 2. And if we have three equations, you can also name the other one to say it is equation 3. Okay, and then the second step of solving simultaneous equation number 2 is what? You create equation 3. You create equation 3. You create equation 3. So how do you create equation 3? You create equation 3. If you had two equations, you will create equation 3. If you had three equations, you will create equation 4. So this method depends on the number of equations that you have. If here you had two equations, therefore you will create equation 3. But if here you had another equation which is equation 3, here you will have create equation 4. Okay, and then how do you create equation 3, or how do you create the other equation to say. You create the other equation either from choosing equation 1 or equation 2. So you create the other equation from the equation that you already have. That's how you create the other equation. You create your other equations from the equations that you already have. So how do you go about creating them from the equations that you already have? What you do is you make x or y the subject of the formula. You make x or y the subject of the formula. So it depends on which variable you choose to make. You make x or y the subject of the formula. So that's how you create the other equations. It's either you make x or you make y to be the subject of the formula. So that's how you create the other equation. Then from here, what you do is also making x or y the subject of the formula. You make x and y the subject of the formula from the equations that you have chosen from equation 1 or equation 2. And another thing, guys, the equation that you choose from equation 1 or equation 2 has to be a simple equation, not only just a complex and not only just an equation, but it must be a simple equation for you to create equation 3. The equation from 1 or 2 has to be the simplest equation for you to create equation 3 or 4 or 5. Okay, and then so for this step, let's use this example that we had. We had two equations, equation 1 and equation 2. And then the second step says now you create your equation 3. How do you create your equation 3? You create your equation 3 either from the equation 1 or equation 2, which are the equations that we already have. So equation 1, when we check equation 1, it's y is equals to 3x plus 4, and the other equation is y is equals to 3 to the x to the power 3 minus 4. So x to the power 3, this is more or less complicated equation. So you cannot go about making x the subject of the formula in this case. Why? Because of x is more complicated. You will be putting roots and all of those things. So you will be making it more complicated. But the simplest equation between equation 1 and equation 2 is equation 1, because of equation 1 is more or less straight and forward, and all of the powers of equation 1, they have power of 1. So taking equation 1, so from equation 1 we want to make equation 3. How do you go about making it? You say equation 1 was y is equals to 3x plus 4. Because of equation 1 had y to be the subject of the formula, therefore now your equation 3, which is the one you're making, has to be x being the subject of the formula. Equation 1 had y being the subject of the formula, so therefore now your equation 3 will have x being the subject of the formula. So you make x the subject of the formula, you take the 4 to the other side, it becomes y is equals to 4, y minus 4, then this side will be left with the 3x, and then you divide by 3 both sides. Therefore you find it that x is equals to 1 over 3 multiplied by 1 y minus 4. So this is how you make equation 3. So therefore this one is the equation 3 that we were creating. Therefore the third step of simultaneous equation, then now after making equation 3, you substitute equation 3. After making equation 3, you substitute equation 3 into equation 1. Why equation 1? Because of equation 1 was the equation that we never used to make equation 3. If you take equation 3 and then substitute it into equation 1, that will, no, equation 2, here it's supposed to be equation 2. If you take equation 3 and then substitute it into equation 1, you will be going backward to the original equation that you already made. So you substitute your equation 3 into the equation you never used before, so which is equation 2. So that's why you substitute equation 3, which is this one, into equation 2, which is the equation you never used or dealt with before. Okay, then after substituting equation 3, so equation 3 is substituted into equation you never used, into an equation you never used. So equation 3 is substituted into the equation you never used. And then the last step now says that therefore after the last step says you solve for the unknown. the last step is that you solve for an unknown. So how do you solve for unknown? You solve for an unknown. After solving for an unknown, because of you will have substituted equation 3 into the equation you never used. Therefore, you'll have one unknown now. You'll be having one unknown, and then after solving that one unknown, you take that unknown, then substitute it into your either equation 1 and equation 2 to find the other unknown, which is maybe x, which is maybe y. So this is how you go about solving by simultaneous equation. Let's do one of the examples so that we see how do we apply this method we just dealt with. So the question that we have is, the question says x plus y is equals to 2, and then the other equation says x squared minus y squared is equals to 4. So you are asked to find the x and y solving by simultaneous equation. So remember that from the first steps that we dealt with, the first step says that what do? You name your equation. So you just have to name your equation. So the first step, so naming this equation, we name it to be equation 1, then the other one we name it to be equation 2. Afterwards, after naming your equations, the second step says that you create equation 3, or you make equation 3. So from equation 1 and equation 2, equation 1 is more simpler compared to equation 2, simply because of equation 2 had x to the power of 2 and y to the power of 2, which is more or less more complicated, but the x plus y is more simpler compared to the other one. So we make equation 3 from the simplest equation, which is equation 1. So then you can just say from equation 1, from EQ1, there we make equation 3. How do you make equation 3? You take x plus y is equals to 2. You take your x to the other side. Therefore, it becomes 2 minus y, 2 minus x. It becomes 2 minus x. And then since now it's 2 minus x, from here, this one is denoted to be equation 3. You denote it to be equation 3. And then after making equation 3, remember guys, what does the other step say? The other steps now says that you substitute equation 3 into the equation that you didn't use. Which one is the equation we didn't use? It is equation 2. We never used equation 2. So you substitute equation 3 into equation 2. So how do you substitute it? We take equation 3 and then take equation 3, put it into equation 2. So where we see our y, we will now put it 2 minus. Where we see our y, we put 2 minus x. So it's going to be x squared minus 2 minus x squared is equals to 4. And then from here, guys, what we do is going to be x squared. From here, it is foreign method. It's brackets of the same thing. So it's 2 minus x, another bracket is 2 minus x again is equals to 4, and then y is equals to, then from here, first outer inner last term. So remember it's your FOIL method now. So it's going to be 4 minus 2x plus x squared is equals to 4. This is just a simplified method of it, but just to do a step. If you don't understand, you can leave a comment on the comment section. Then taking here, you multiply it with the first term, and then negative multiply with the second term is plus 2x, and then minus x squared is equals to 4. And then from here, guys, these and these, they both cancel, and then you'll be only left with 4. Take 4 minus 4, I mean you take it to the other side, it becomes 4 plus 4. Then you'll be only left this side with 2x, and then 4 plus 4 is 8. So your x is therefore 2. You divide by 2. So after finding x, remember that last step, what you do is you take your x, you substitute your x into any of the equation to find the other unknown. So let's take our x and then substitute it into equation 1 to find the other unknown. Equation 1 was x plus y is equals to 2. So we have our x now, we want our y. How do we find our y? We take 2, we put it here, then we find our y. So it's y is equals to 2 minus 2. So your y is going to be 0. And then from here, guys, now you know that your x is 2, your y is 0. You can also prove these two answers. Take both answers you found, then substitute them here. You will get to see that your answer is correct.